We do it all the time and we hardly ever think about it. Most of us have been doing it for so long that we forget what a complex process it really is. And when it comes to our babies, we just want to know when they're going to start, what to look out for, and how we can help them get moving in that bipedal human way we all know and love. So welcome back to another video. We've gotten so much great feedback on our stages of crawling video that we thought, why not take the natural next step? That's a bad pun. And make a follow-on video about walking. So that's what we're here to do today. We're going to talk the talk about walking the walk. We'll cover when you should expect your baby to start walking, the physical signs and some of the anatomy and structures necessary to walk, and what to do and especially what not to do to best help your child walk on their own. So with that said, let's get down to business. When it comes to learning basic maneuvers like sitting up, rolling over, and crawling, most babies reach those milestones within a fairly narrow window. In other words, your baby and my baby and the neighbor down the street's baby will all learn to sit up within a few months of each other. So let's say all three babies are the exact same age, born on the same day at the same time. They're extremely likely to learn at different speeds, but they'll probably all fall within that average span of time, give or take. So it shouldn't concern you if your child falls outside the window of what is considered quote-unquote normal. When you consider the fact that most babies, but not all, learn to crawl before they walk, and that your baby might be a pro crawler by 8 months while mine might still not have it down at 10 months, you can imagine the ripple effect of that learning curve when it comes to building subsequent skills, like walking. Those early maneuvers, sitting, crawling, rolling over, are building blocks, and you don't usually start building a tower from the top, right? You get the foundation in place first. Now, I've heard all kinds of stories from friends and from those of you who have left comments on our other videos about babies who stay in one stage and don't progress for a long time, or who skip certain stages altogether or take them out of order, and I understand how easy it is to be anxious if you think your child is falling behind developmentally. But unless you have been told by a doctor that there's a legitimate health concern affecting your child's body, the feet, the legs, the spine, or a mental condition that would affect their progress in some other way, chances are you have very little reason to worry. So tip number 1, don't rush it. The last thing you want to do is force what isn't meant to be, and we'll talk about that in a moment. If your friend's kid has already started walking and yours hasn't, and they're the same age, that's not something to get jealous over. That's the bottom line. Studies have shown no link whatsoever between overall intelligence and the speed at which babies start walking. In fact, it may surprise you to know that if your baby's walking on their own, unassisted, before their first birthday, they're doing great and are probably ahead of the curve. 12 months is about the average for walking, but it's quite alright and totally normal for it to take a lot longer than that. Some babies don't walk until 18 months or later, and progress from one stage to the next can take many forms. We are all individuals with our own unique way of approaching the world, and so if your baby sits up before they roll over or scoots before they crawl, it doesn't make them wrong or weird, it makes them them. So what does it take to walk? What do you need? What physical structures and movements are required? Well, let's get into some anatomy for a minute. Newborns and infants have soft bones and tiny muscles that are not at all equipped for load bearing. The thin bones in the toes, feet, and ankles are especially vulnerable in those early months when your baby's learning to control their arms and legs after being bundled up in the womb like a little burrito. But that's exactly why newborns and infants make those constant jerking movements with their limbs, because they've been suspended in an aqueous environment and are now stretching out against the forces of gravity. So all that movement they're doing is part of the process of sensory and motor development. It's a necessary step for building strength, and in doing so, they will slowly gain control of their limbs. You'll notice their movements becoming less twitchy over time as their muscles and bones develop, and when they finally do gain that full control is when they start learning to grasp and pick things up. What happens next is covered in our stages of crawling video, so we'll refer you to that for a more in-depth discussion of that phase. In this video, we're focusing on what comes after they learn to move along the ground in whatever form that takes. Usually it's crawling, but sometimes it's scooting or rolling. Depends on the baby. Suffice it to say that as the bones and muscles build and become denser through the act of propelling themselves from one place to another, your baby will start to experiment with greater ranges of motion as they feel themselves becoming more capable. A huge mistake that we made with Xander was propping him up way too soon and too often, and that goes for both sitting and standing. We did not realize until our family chiropractor told us in no uncertain terms that lifting your baby into a stand or a seat before they can do so themselves generally does more harm than good. And the reason for this is that those soft structures in the body haven't had time to prepare themselves for carrying weight. Remember, the tower that we're building needs that solid foundation, and we don't want to sit a baby up before their spine can handle the load, or stand them up before those thin, soft little bones in the feet are ready to bear their full weight. And admittedly, it's very hard when your child reaches that stage and they're pushing themselves up to sit and you see them grabbing at furniture trying to stand, to resist the urge to help them, or at least to be there to make sure they don't fall. And you should do that, absolutely. But as strange as it may sound, you need to trust their instincts above yours. They'll know when they're ready. They will sense it, and they will move, like most humans do, toward the most efficient path. When they see something they want, they'll figure out how to get it, and it won't be long before they realize that walking is the optimal way of getting there. Just like you don't crawl around on your hands and knees because you know walking is superior, your baby is smart enough to figure that out with time. Most of the time they already know it, they're just waiting for their bodies to catch up. All you need to do is be patient and make sure you don't get in the way. Here's how you can do that. When they do start to stand up on their own, it's okay to help them balance by holding onto their hands. What you don't want to do is lift them or hold their arms above their head, because then you're not only disrupting the natural stance of walking with arms level or at the sides for balance, you're also more likely to help them too much by reducing the weight load on their feet. And at this point, if they can lift themselves to a stand on their own, it's a sign that not only are their feet and legs ready, but that they've developed sufficient core strength through their hips and spine to support that full body weight. They'll probably cling to you or to furniture for a good while before they feel ready to let go, and soon they'll even begin to transition from object to object for support as they navigate the room. That's called cruising, and they'll often do that for a while. It's only after they're comfortable with their sense of balance that they'll eventually work up the nerve to leave behind whatever they're holding on to. It's important to note that part of that courage may come down to personality. So a bolder child may try taking steps on their own a little sooner than a timid one. Again, it's best to stay back while encouraging them and remaining supportive. You can try enticing them to come to you by offering a favorite toy or even a little snack, but ultimately leave it up to their instincts. A rolling push toy can also help them practice their form, since if they're holding onto couches and coffee tables, they might be shuffling or leaning sideways instead of keeping their gravity forward of center. Just make sure not to use an infant walker, which is one of those wheeled plastic frames with a little diaper-shaped harness that you drop them into. With those, they're more sitting than standing, pedaling Flintstone style. Plus, those types of walkers have resulted in thousands of injuries, mostly due to stairs or to structural collapse. So if you have one, get rid of it right now. Don't give it away, throw it away. The stationary activity centers or jumpers are safer as long as your baby's already able to support themselves and their legs are long enough to reach whatever surface is at the bottom. But be aware that excessive use of these jumpers doesn't give your baby enough time to experiment under their own power, which means they may be slower to pursue other forms of self-driven movement. We were lucky enough to capture Xander's very first steps on video, so as a proud father, I hope you'll permit me the briefest of moments here to show you this heartwarming clip.
Come on. Come on.
Whoa! Look at
He
you!
just walked!
Look at
Oh my
you,
goodness! Yay! Wow! Oh my gosh!
Isn't he so cute and good at walking? Anyway, I digress. Those first few unaided steps and your reaction to them may be just the confidence booster your baby needs to try it again. And it won't be long before they're taking off on their own to explore every corner of your home, especially the ones that have the most trouble to be found. So batten down the hatches, lock up your valuables, and go check out our baby-proofing video, because if you thought keeping tabs on a crawler was tough, just wait till they're grabbing steak knives out of the dishwasher and running away laughing because they think this is a fun game of chase you're playing. Yes, Xander actually has done that, and we've had to have some serious conversations about why that's not the way we do things in this house. So now that your child is walking, here are just a couple of extras to consider. First, if you've been using a playpen or baby gates to keep them contained in a smaller area while they were crawling, now might be a good time to think about packing that up, as long as the barricaded sections don't involve stairs, of course. You'll probably find very quickly that once your child is walking, they don't want to be limited to that smallest space anymore, and it may not give them enough room to really test themselves over longer distances. Next, you will of course want to create clear pathways and open areas throughout the house for them to navigate, so that means clearing floors of low obstacles like stools or baskets or stacks of books that might be a tripping hazard. If you've got immovable obstacles, as you know if you've watched any of our other videos, we have that single step down into our living room. I guess you'd call that a sunken living room. We had to keep a close eye on Xander when he was just starting out, but over time it became kind of a nice way for him to practice stepping up and down without the risk of a full set of stairs. He would have us hold his hands at first, then just one hand, then he started doing it himself, hanging onto the wall, and now he's at the point where he stands on the step and practices his jumping. And lastly, flexible but supportive shoes are okay for going out, but while you're home you should let them walk barefoot so they can learn to use proper toe control for balance. Shoes are protective, obviously, but they aren't necessarily the best thing for teaching the members of the foot to work properly on their own. So to summarize everything we've talked about today, trust your child's instincts when it comes to their bodies. Don't rush them because they'll know and sense when they're ready to advance to each new phase. Give them more room to roam if possible, while setting any necessary limits and baby-proofing the areas of the house where they'll be spending most of their time. Again, we've got a video on baby-proofing, so give that a watch and let us know if you have questions. Keep floors clear, keep areas safe, keep shoes off, and keep your eyes open for all the thrills and spills your little walker may take as they discover and develop their newfound abilities. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you have questions or tips you want to share, be sure to drop them in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video and you think you'd enjoy watching lots of others like it, we would love for you to join us by subscribing to the channel. We're here to share our parenting experiences with you and build a community where we can all help each other grow and learn so we can be better and do better for our kids. Be sure to give us a thumbs up if you think we're doing well, and we will see you in the next one.
Old Xander had a farm, E-I-E-I-O.
Hop, hop.
And on that farm he had some bunny rabbits, E-I-E-I-O. With a hop, hop here and a hop, hop there. Here a hop, there a hop, everywhere a hop, hop. Old Xander had a farm, E-I-E-I-O. With a hop, hop here and a hop, hop there. Here a hop, there a hop, everywhere a hop, 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 hop here and a hop, hop there. Here a hop, there a hop, everywhere a hop, hop. Old